So good morning, everybody. What I thought we'd talk about this morning is the preparing for the PC world. It's a provocative thing because we used to call the PC world the personal computer world. Today, I think in 2021, lo and behold, we find ourselves in the thinking about, at least, and depends on the variants and the mutations, what the post-COVID world is going to look like, which is an important consideration. I think there's nobody everybody in the world, I think, accepts that we live in what we would call post-normal times. And post-normal times, I tried to think about a way to describe it, and you just have to listen to any radio talk shows. Today, for example, President Biden's going to be announcing new travel things, could be restrictions. As some of the announcers on CFRB said yesterday, is that going to be a new thing, new travel restrictions, depending on what happens in the world? Well, what we're trying to deal with is uncertainty. And then we have, I hate to use the word ignorance, but this is not my language, but there is ignorance, not knowing what lies ahead. And then we have what we call manufactured normalcy field, where humans try and figure things out based on terms of reference that they can understand and relate to. So the uncertainty is here. We've lived, most of us, depending on our biological age, in periods of varying uncertainty. If we were young adults in 1939, and I don't think anybody here in the room was a young adult in 1939, perhaps, but I could just imagine, I guess, if we just took ourselves back, the prelude to World War II, where many young people would be called to fight for, I'll call it, freedom. And there was the forces, the Allied forces, the Axis forces. There was high uncertainty, very high uncertainty. And if you lived in Europe, the uncertainty was, I think, to some degree extreme. And we can't really put ourselves in that time space. But I think what we saw back then and what we're seeing today is different types of uncertainty. There's surface uncertainty, people who ignore many things and blocking it out and say, I can't deal with this. Then we have shallow uncertainty where things tighten up. And then we have what's been called deep uncertainty. Making decisions in deep uncertainty, where chaos, contradictions, and complexity are hammering on each other, adds a sprinkle of wow to this. And I think it's contingent on us as leaders in technology to really think about the level of uncertainty we're dealing with, whether it's the organization we support from a technology perspective, whether it's what we're teaching our young people in the sphere of technology. And I'd like you to reflect on that. We'll come back to this later in the keynote. Do a little bit of time travel. The personal computing world, you can correct my number. It shows that we're 40 years in the making. It's much more than that, but I kind of mark it from when my first personal computer arrived, cost of $1,900 Canadian dollars, in 1986, and we thought at the time that the world was our oyster, that we had it all figured out. I had this weird urge to want to connect that device you see there to networks, to what we call bulletin boards. And the first time I linked it was with a Microsoft modem. I remember the modem, it had Microsoft, the word Microsoft. I should have kept the darn thing. Probably worth $1 million Canadian dollars now. But Microsoft sold the modem, 1200 baud modem. And I thought, wow, if I ever got a 9600 baud modem, again, the world will have changed. But what it signaled was what today and for the last decade or so I've called a business, because those computers started connecting. Those computers linked together. Those early computers, my early computer in Brampton, Ontario, I lived up in N section Brampton. I used it to connect to the Nortel mainframe. That's all it really did. But then I discovered a bulletin board, and humans want to connect. And it has led us to what I call the net computing world, where network-based computing links anywhere, anytime, always on, affordable, adaptive, and it's autonomic. And a good example of what's a net computing manifestation is the Ring device, Ring doorbell, that alerts you that somebody's at your door, or if you're an Amazon subscriber, that your Amazon package has arrived. I'm expecting one this morning. I'll know when it's here because it will alert me on my smartphone and also in my Ring devices in home that my parcel has arrived. So I can go get it, do the 50-foot walk versus the 1 or 2 mile drive to a store. So what's happening? Connectivity everywhere is an unstoppable force. And I would put to you that it's a foundational enabler of the post-COVID world. The fact that we as workers, knowledge workers for the most part, have been able to Zoom, to get on Teams, even Google has a meeting place online. And we've been able to connect. Obviously, you need a good internet connection. I'm speaking to you this morning from Orillia, Ontario, at my cottage, and it really made it easy for me to work from here, having a 1 gig connection, a persistent 1 gig connection. But the point is, though, there'll be more and more connectivity, more and more devices. There'll be exceptions. If you're in the middle of Tuktoyaktuk, Siberia, your connectivity will be impaired. But the point is that there will be 100 billion devices or more. That's a prediction, and which will give rise to a whole new digital society where digital content becomes king. And we're seeing that already today in 2021. Digital content, so funny thing, I first put some deep thought into digital content when I joined a well-known Canadian company, OpenText, as head of technology, and their tagline at the time was the content experts. It took me about a year to figure out what the founders, Tom Jenkins in particular, meant by that. About a year, and I'm a pretty astute individual most of the time, but it was truly understanding what digital content is, and really took me back to McLuhan's time, Marshall McLuhan, who talked about what's the message. Medium is the message. The rest of that sentence is medium as the message. But the point is, each new device framework, whether it's an iPhone or whether it's a Android device, could be a tablet like this. I have 2 of them here with me. Every new device produces and consumes digital content and makes new possibilities. Now let's talk about what's clear in this world of uncertainty. One thing is clear, and I've called this the DAAA world. If you drop the D, it's the Auto Club of America. That's not what I'm referring to here. What we're seeing is innovations in digitization, analytics, adaptive intelligence. We're going to come back to that construct in a minute, and automation. That DAAA world, the DA, are creating new performance and productivity improvement opportunities and improvements for business and the economy at large. Now, at the core of this is cloud-based computing. These devices have to meet someplace. But what's happening is they are fundamentally, this world is fundamentally reshaping business as we know it. governments, NGOs, and the future of work. Even Facebook's acknowledged that with their metaverse thinking. One of the most interesting areas of my own research, I do research these days. I'm a retired, semi-retired old guy who's interested in looking forward while I still can, is adaptive intelligence. If you haven't looked at adaptive intelligence, it's my definition of AI. It's intelligence that adapts. You should take a look at that. I leave that for another day, but it is something that if you really put some deep thinking on it, in a period of deep uncertainty, you'll realize that it is a force to be reckoned with and something that should be in your area of examination. The question today for your day, and thank you for joining us today, is cloud computing, and we can have various definitions of it, a foundational pillar of that DAA world. Well, in that DAA world, what matters? Customer experience and behavior above all else. Any restaurant that could not physically operate during the pandemic, if they didn't have an online presence, the ability to order takeout food, they suffered, and or a number of them disappeared. Those that were ready, who were able to meet a shifted customer experience. In other words, people couldn't come to the restaurants. Imagine that world. We could never imagine that. But that customer experience and behaviors around that, if you could respond to that online, you would survive. Because we're playing in some ways a survival game to get to the post-COVID world, is surviving the present challenges. The second thing is simplicity and speed taken to the max. Whether we like it or not, since instant Carnation invented instant breakfast in the 60s, I'm an old guy, as I remember instant breakfast, food on demand. Well, simplicity and speed really are the high bars that Apple is training millions of young minds to expect. Behaviors, online behaviors are all about simplicity and speed. 1 click, for example, not 10 clicks. And it needs a lot of cloud computing to be able to achieve that reasonably well. And then we get into how much processing power is needed to do the job, the workload. Well, it's a GPU world, not a CPU world ahead. I can't think of an organization that can afford the GPUs required to be able to scale up, to do computation 1 million, 10 million, 100 million times with more power than what they would do on premises. So cloud computing makes that possible. And you know, if you haven't had the opportunity to work with GPU type capability, the first time you see 1 billion calculations come out in about 1.5 seconds, then you say, well, the world has changed, and it has. But what it does is makes hyper collaboration inside and outside the enterprise, and that's a loose definition because it could be an NGO or government agency. The ability to collaborate at distance, to share and to exchange information, ideas, and to create a near real life experience. It's not the same. We accept that. Not arguing that, but hyper collaboration is, if you think about the friction that it would take me to come to Hamilton this morning with changing weather. It's not so bad here in Ontario, but if you're in British Columbia, the changing weather makes collaboration that much more difficult. But hyper collaboration, hyper elasticity, things that can be done on demand. Michael sent me a link and said, here's the link, by the way, just in case, and just make sure you have the right link, because that's the elasticity. It's a long link, by the way, for me to join you this morning. But it's all about being hyper connected. And cloud computing, as we know it, and you'll say, well, it's just like shared time on a mainframe. Not quite. You get hyper collaboration possibilities, hyper elasticity, and hyper connectivity. You add those three forces and you get a lot of value back. And you know, the ability to connect with people matters a lot. So what's really going on? Well, there is still a lack of trust. The common phrase heard is, I know we should be using cloud computing, advanced network-based computing, but I just don't trust it. And the more hackers do their evil deeds, the more lack of trust there is. And securing cloud computing is not simple. There's no question. The reality is, pretty well everybody knows what we should be doing. And I find it quite interesting listening, well, we need to do digital transformation. And it's kind of said with hushed tones, because if an organization hasn't yet figured out digitalization or digital transformation at scale, I got bad news for you. You're running out of time. And time will overwhelm your organization. So digitalization, that's digitization at scale. Using the capability at hand to be able to do the work required to both sustain in the present and survive the PC world. A good example is agile development. I first started working agile development in 2001. That's 20 years ago. The Agile Manifesto was published earlier that year, and at Bell, where I was, we switched over. Simply sent an email to my 6,000 people and said, starting Monday, we switch. And these debates about waterfall, hybrid waterfall, all it's like debating whether somebody should get a vaccine or not. Take the vaccine and protect yourself. Agile development protects the work. And there's so many organizations, I still see it wherever I go, that do not understand that you have to use design thinking. You have to design the outcomes you're looking for in an agile way. And I think we know that, but so many people are so, well, but if we really have a good paper plan, good luck, you're not going to make it. We also know we should automate once manual processes, such as testing, integration, and database management. And that's still a gap in many ways. I recently worked with an organization where all testing was done manually, over 100,000 hours worth. And we said, we're going to automate that. And you could hear the third-party companies, because it was done by whining about loss of business. It's not about loss of business. It's automating processes so they're repeatable. You can analyze them, you can put analytics on them, and that's what we need to do. We also know we have to mobilize our properties, our digital properties. And mobile first for a lot of organizations is still something like, well, we have a website, what's wrong with that? No, you have to be mobile first. Be mobile ready. If you watch my lovely wife, Renata, she uses her smartphone like this. I would say you're gonna go blind one day, but she prefers having it right here in front of her. She has an iPad and she has a laptop, but her thing is that she's there doing this. When we're driving the car together, this is what she's doing. I have to remind her to check the Google map to see if there's traffic ahead. I have a little routine. Can you please, before you go and do this, can you do that? Now that's a combination of a connected world where she can 3G, 4G, 5G from a moving vehicle and do the same thing as she's doing, whether it's at home or at her home office. That's a mobile world. We know we also have to invest, and this is a very important point here, as much or more in our digital experience as we invest in our products themselves. Oh, that's a controversial statement. You say that to a conventional leader of an organization, they go, what? We should invest that much in digital experience? What? I was CTO of a major Canadian retailer, and I retired from there in 2018 when I laid out this thesis, because that's what this is. I got a very weird reaction from many, and it's, well, we put products on shelves. No, we're in a digital experience business. And I'm glad to report that we were able to overcome that inertia, because it was human inertia to what business that organization is in today. They're doing very well, by the way, on that, because digital experiences mean, and you can see some of their Christmas commercials. They're wonderful commercials. that talk about the experience you have, the digital experience. So digital experiences are something that the cloud enables massively. And we're all shocked today saying, well, every company is driving transactions online and running data analysis, and the demand for digital transformation is never been seen like this before. Surprise. What we're really after is understanding how our businesses and customers behave. That's what digital transformation is all about. When you say digital transformation is understanding customer behavior. Here's the issue. There's a lack of expertise of the DAAA world, and expertise matters. And so we have lack of trust, and we have lack of expertise. Ask yourself, who's your favorite consultant who's going to come in and teach you how to do this? They're few and far between. There are a few. And if you want to have a chat of who I see as companies, organizations who can help you through this, give me a private call. We'll have a conversation. In my consulting practice, I've become the dreaded consultant. I connect organizations that are struggling with the DAAA world with other organizations who can help them. And it's about creating those connections. I have 3 clients at this point who are actively working their way through this. And the first step is to acknowledge that you need to do something new and important, because this is important. But the digital age we're referring to here requires that you have the right tools and processes. Heck, we got lots of tools. There's so much software in 2021, I can't even imagine. You talk about processes, process engineering, process re-engineering, the whole world up there. But you have to have expertise, and you have to be able to apply judgment to this. And one of the organizations I'm working with has recently struck a subcommittee of their board for digital transformation. Interesting. Okay. This is now the second time I've seen that since I retired at the end of 2018. I actually headed up a digital transformation subcommittee of a board of directors in a previous organization. And what we were trying to do is bring the right experts to the table. That was an all digital business, and the leadership didn't really know that. They struggle with that. And they said, well, we're in the business of making money. Absolutely, no dispute on that. But they were in the digital experience business. In the subcommittee, there were 3 directors of the board. It was a publicly traded company, helped bring that focus. And I really enjoy talking to different organizations, especially their boards or the chairs, and they go, well, we don't need somebody who's a technologist on our board. My pet peeve. And I said, well, okay, well, you have finance, legal types, compliance types. How many technologists do you have on your board? And I've been on the board of a well-known university, York University. There are 2 technologists, Helen Politaiko and myself, are on the board of governors. I was the first. It was a pretty lonely place. And then we asked Helen to join us, and we're looking for a 3rd person on a board of, it's a larger board, 20 governors. But the point is, though, we're helping the university protect itself digitally, make sure it's using cloud computing to the maximum to take advantage for the students and faculty, and also to have access to the right experts to make a difference. So what's the issue? There's lack of proper training. If I said to you, go take a course in DAAA, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty tough. How would we do that? And not so simple to do that. And the point is, the tools and processes are there. So what? In many ways, if we step back for a second, it feels like the early days of the internet. Got to have a webmaster. That was the sound that the drumbeat you'd hear in 99, 2000. Where's my webmaster? Well, where are those webmasters today? Many of them went on to careers as CIOs and CTOs, myself included. But what was a webmaster? It was somebody who really understood what was going on online. See how I said that? What was going online at the time, given the capability. And if you know, I remember vividly the earlier part of that era when people said, "You're going to buy pet food online? Are you nuts?" Well, it happens all the time today. Amazon wasn't Amazon yet, and when we first saw Amazon, highly disruptive, and I've had executives say to me, "They're not a threat. No, they're a shift." The individual who said that to me was right. They're a shift in the cloud. And what I find fascinating about Amazon is not only have they built a product side to their business, they've also brought the world AWS. Clever move, Mr. Bezos. Clever move. It really helped him and his organization truly understand the web services world. They even picked a good name, web services, which are all cloud-based. You know, now they have on-premise in their cloud. But the point is, though, they have deep expertise that most companies, most organizations struggle with. And they've taught the world a lesson. So training in the DAAA world is important, and it has to be proper training. So what's happening is, if we really look carefully, if we kind of zoom in on what's happening, is digitization is accelerating. It's always been a force, but now the barriers to what's your business case? Why should we do this? Are dropping by the wayside as organizations realize if you're not online, if you're not connecting with your customers, your employees, and your suppliers, you're off the air. And in some ways, it has broken the barriers that many of us have faced. Should we invest in cloud computing? Absolutely. The question, and then it becomes the finance leaders or the finance people. I'm a CPA, so I can say this with the green eye shades. They come out and they go, well, show me your business case. And it really astounds me that the finance community, which surrounds us, still in many ways doesn't get this digitization effect. And in some ways, the finance folks who are anti-digitization, because they do exist, they throw up, well, it's going to cost a lot of money. And I've had these discussions over the last 20 years in different organizations. And at some point, I felt like I should just give up and retire, become a consultant. I got good news for you. I became that. But the digitization resistance comes in different forms. Digital literacy amongst executives is still not where it's supposed to be. How do we expect them to understand the DAAA world? And you know, moving from offline to digital realities is a must. Changing the balance from real to mixed reality, what is called the phygital world. I can't see you, so I can't ask, but many of you, if you haven't seen the term phygital, physical, digital world, look it up. It's a term, it's a thing. I didn't make it up. Now, we made up a word to my previous employer, phygital, T-A-I-L, physical, digital, retail, to try and help the system understand that the physical digital had to come together around the retail experience. And those organizations that figure that out, if they're in the retail space, in the retail sector, and that could be movie theaters, could be food retail, could be hard goods retail, clothing. The act of selling something is part of that. Then the question, of course, is what comes next? It's always what's next? What's next? I think if you accept that the DAAA world is the driver, what's next is much better, easier to understand. The 2020s are going to be a fascinating time. You notice my little punch card there. I hope you all know what that is, but many students going through technology education today in early careers have no idea what that is. It really, in many ways, was our bridge from the physical world to the digital world. It was a card. But the planned digitalization, there's that term, digitalization. Many businesses, educational institutions, and nonprofits has been accelerated. And people were shocked that all of a sudden everybody started working from home. There was no debate because you couldn't physically go to an office in a safe way in March 2020. Now, in some ways, depending on your mental predisposition, you might think we entered an ice age, deep freeze. Yesterday, I was listening to the radio, CFRB 1010. I find talk show radio. I do it differently, but I'm not in the radio business. But CFRB, they were talking, called in, and the lady said, "I just gotta go to Cuba. I gotta go. I had enough." And then the announcer said, "Well, how many times Jamil Jawani, how many times you gone to Cuba?" 30 times. Okay, good luck. She's gonna go to Cuba. Damn the virus. That's her safe place. That's where that lady wants to go to be safe. My safe place is a digital world where organizations use the capability to do their job, to create a safe work environment, also a safe place for people to shop, a safe place for people to exchange ideas, to learn. I lecture at the Schulich School at York when the mood strikes me, and I haven't, since COVID struck, met a student physically. I was the CIO at Metrolinx for last year. I have no idea where my office was. I had two of them, supposedly. Had never met an employee physically and pulled off the job. It was all virtual. It was a virtual world. And the barriers came down. They came down fast. And the infrastructure guys, the guys who run computing data centers, networks, all of a sudden became kings. They were always kings. We just didn't know how important they were until there was a need. So what's happening in this world is big data is of immense significance. There's no question. Problem is, organizations, I need more data. You have lots of data. They're not using it properly. So new services in the cloud, such as data cleansing services and proper analytics, are going to help you through this, and it's all cloud-based. Let's look at what's going on in the DAA economy. There is a whole slew of new companies that have risen up. Some we know, some we are learning about, and there'll be many more. And these are organizations that are taking advantage of the DAA economy. And my thinking here goes to which of them are going to get bought and by whom, because LinkedIn, for example, was purchased by a large conventional software company, and the story goes on and on. The question for us, as Canadians, as loyal Canadians, how many of these are Canadians? Well, the digital world that of the next decade, I put to you, is about learning a digital living. We'll talk some more about that at the lunch break. But the future, McLuhan was right, the future of work consists of learning a living. Look at organizations that learned how to do things. These are Canadian companies, and not many are still with us. I cut my teeth at Nortel Networks, BNR. I still have a level of sadness of what happened there. There are many employees at BlackBerry who no longer have a job. BlackBerry invented the smartphone world. I did a tour of duty at OpenText. It was a fascinating tour. Canada's largest software company, made up of 100 acquisitions, and the list goes on. The question is will we take these ingredients, these learnings, our massively powerful educational system, and create new billion-dollar unicorns? We can say, oh, there's Shopify. Yeah, there is Shopify, and there are others, but we as Canadians are punching below our weight on this, and we need to take a lesson from history. What happened to B&R and Nortel networks and BlackBerry were travesties. Those were disasters, and there were reasons for it. I lived two of them. I remember trying to convince Balsillie and Lazaridis in 2008 that the iPhone was going to crush them, and they thought I was nuts. Unfortunately, I was correct. The iPhone did crush them. And then Android followed quickly behind, brought to you from Google, which put the death knell into a once amazing, incredible company that showed the way forward. And but that too is part of technology history. In a world of deep uncertainty, what matters is that we are, I put to you today, and I want you to think about this through the day, at the beginning of a new digital age where a number of things come together. We're going to see ever increasingly extreme connectivity. Adaptive automation is going to be a thing. And hypercloud computing heading towards quantum is going to be a thing again. And what we're seeing is these three forces are converging. There's more A words, there are more A business words: accurate, automatic, awesome. And convergence of this capability is what will spark new innovation, new ideas, create new industry, new economy. And I caution you, don't take the future for granted, shape it and build it. The work that everybody here at this conference does is omni-important. It is the core of this whole digital revolution, the digital age that we're living in. It's taken us 40 years to get here, folks. Let's not blow the future. Let's converge upon the opportunities and do the job that we are empowered to deal with. If you notice, I've got gray hair now. When I started this revolution 40 odd years ago in my own lifeline, I still have hair, but it was a whole different hair color. And you know, my hope for the future is that young generation, next generations of Canadians especially, will take advantage of what seniors like myself, and I'm sure some of you in the audience count yourself as seniors, have put together for them to serve up for the future, serve the future, pay it forward. And I think that's the key. And thank you, Michael, for inviting me this morning. This conference is all about serving the future and paying it forward. Thank you.
Gene, that was wonderful. I believe we have 4 minutes left in the time slot for Eugene. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask him? Or are there any online questions? And you can have a microphone too. Oh.
So, Eugene, I really like your amazing ability to coin new phrases, and the phygital world is one that I'm going to be using all day, I think. I'm just wondering, what's the place for physical in a session like this? I mean, you've been very successful managing your work life through digital communications. What's the place for the physical world anymore?
Well, that's a very good question. let me just take it this way. The question for a lot of folks is, do I need a data center? Yes. Do you need to own it? It depends. Depends on the workload. So hybrid facilities, data centers, hybrid stores are important. And so hybridization of the physical digital are where things happen. You know, if you're I'll give you a simple example. My mother-in-law is 86, in a home, doing well, but she needs specialized clothing. She's in a wheelchair and it's not the same. And you know, you go online, you say, and we looked at it yesterday, and I said, you know, you're better to go to the store because you have to be able to, it's a new experience for us to have to help her. So Amazon say, well, you can order it and return it. But there's still something about look and feel in that situation. Now it's situational, and we're actually heading to Mark's, one of the stores that I worked with, because they have clothes that work, and it has to work for somebody who's in a wheelchair. Amazon doesn't get to that level of specificity. I'm sure there are websites, I haven't found one yet that does that. So the physical informs the digital informs the physical, and that's why the phygital revolution works. Once you know what you want, your ability to click and shop, or click and learn, click and do something, is greatly enhanced. Today we have young people who in so many ways are very skewed towards the digital, and I always call them digitally disabled, because so you don't know the world of the before. And I think your question is germane to what's physical, what's not physical, and we have to separate. The key to learning is to be able to know what and when. You know, I love to fish. I've learned a lot about fishing online, but casting a fishing rod online doesn't work. It's not the same. So that's why those digital experiences help you in so many ways. You know, I'm a master beekeeper. I've learned so much online from beekeeping by sharing, but then I form my own opinions as to what to do. So I think that's the key, and it's a great question you asked. We'll have to answer it over time.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. I learn every time I listen to you, and I've learned again today. This is terrific. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, folks. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today. And Godspeed in the future. It's moving quickly.